Hello and welcome to Tokyo Inklings. My name is CY. You can find me on my website at tokyostationpens.com, on TikTok and Instagram at tokyostationpens, and on Twitter at tokyostationmnh.
And my name is Jacob, and I am Foodafan on Instagram and on Twitter, and have a blog at foodafan.com.
And this is episode 49. One more to 50, Jacob. I think that's a huge achievement.
Does this mean we need to do something special next time?
I don't know. Maybe get the crew together again. I mean, we had them last time, but that's always fun. But yeah, episode 50. I think that's a milestone, Jacob. Not as big as 100, but I think 50 is pretty big.
Yes. Although we have already done, I think this is the 52nd already.
Yes.
With emergencies.
Yeah, we have the regular episodes and the emergency episodes. So, yeah, kind of a light episode, quite frankly. I mean, we're not, super heavy on the news. But I think we've still got some interesting things to say. So, let's get cracking at it. I was listening to the Pen Addict podcast this week, and one of the listeners, I think it was listener Dave, sent in a message, and I obviously don't have it in front of me. But they said something to the effect of, hey, Brad, can you do some more investigative journalism into like the Mayora Delta stuff, just like how Tokyo Inklings does investigative journalism into like this Tomoe River stuff. And, Brad has had his take on the whole thing. Before I kind of talk about how I think about that, Jacob, what are your thoughts? Because you're really the person who's been looking more into the financial documents, contacting Tomoe River and stuff. So I'm very curious as to how you kind of understood that.
Right. So I don't want to get into semantics. I think investigative journalism might mean different things to different people. But personally, I would say that if I have a question about something, I would rather try to find an answer from a trustworthy source than to speculate about it. So if I want to know what a deal with Sailor's Zoom nibs is about, I would rather ask Nagahara directly. If I want to know what's going on with Tomoe River, I prefer to ask Tomoegawa. If I want to know what the terms of the Sailor Plus deal is, I would rather go to Edinet and dig up the appropriate disclosure reports. But that's not my goal. Is not to create podcast content. My goal is to satisfy my own curiosity.
Oh, your goal is not to create podcasts.
No, that's just a side effect.
Yeah. And, I think, and maybe this is going to the semantics a bit, but I don't think we're investigative journalists, although maybe some things that we do might have those kind of elements to it. But as you said, it's really to kind of satisfy our curiosity about it. So I think the main thing that we are trying to achieve here is just to make sure that like what we're saying has some kind of a source, or just to make sure that we're well informed about what we're trying to tell our audience, because we do want the podcast to be informative, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And also, we have been very fortunate to have had a chance to talk to some to people like Nagahara, right? And if you do have an opportunity to talk to Nagahara, I mean, of course, you would ask him various questions, right?
Yeah. And, it's not that we don't do some investigative journalism on topics that we find particularly interesting. But yeah, I when I was listening to the episode, I was pretty curious about, the distinction between, what we're doing. Is that really investigative journalism? What kind of podcast do we want to be? And I think the answer to that question is, we're really trying to just deliver good information with good sources. We know that there are different podcasts out there. That's actually one of the reasons why we didn't comment on this YOLO cracked housing issue, because lots of people asked us to do that. Lots of people asked us to say, hey, can you do your investigative journalism on the YOLO cracked housing stuff? I kind of said to them, I was like, well, what do you want me to say about that? Because we don't read German. We well, maybe you do, I don't know.
I don't.
But I don't read German, right? And there's not much that we could contribute there. So that's why I think, we do some of that, but really just within what we can and what interests us. Yeah. And I want to raise an example because this is kind of a news that I found out a few weeks ago. I thought it was pretty interesting. But it kind of is one of those that toes the line. Is about the custom 823. Now, Jacob, you had gone around some shops before, and there are always these rumors about the custom 823 in clear. Some shops or some sources say they're discontinued, they're not on the Pilot website. But my other sources tell me that they're not discontinued, but they're actually part of what Pilot calls the Custom Club, which are stores that really have a good relationship with Pilot, that are like specially allowed to sell these annual special editions. And we talked a little bit about the Bamboo Forest being sold only with staff from Pilot. So the Custom Club is a little bit different, in which they're allowed to sell the different colored Custom 74s, for example, or different edition Pilot Custom series. So I went to Itoya the other day, back at the end of the year, and I just wanted to put this rumor to rest. I wanted to know what was going on. Is it discontinued? Do I have to buy 10 of them? And where should I do that? So I asked them, I said, hey, look, I've been hearing a bunch of stuff, some conflicting information. It's not clear from Pilot. Is the Clear 823 a Japan exclusive? Is it discontinued? Or is it a Custom Kai exclusive? And they told me that the Pilot 823 is in fact a Custom Kai exclusive, which or in English, Custom Club exclusive, which means that only a select network of shops are allowed to sell this product. And I would have been happy just with that information, and that wouldn't have made the podcast. The reason why I'm talking about this is because she then followed up with, actually, the demonstrator 823, the Clear 823 exists because we at Itoya requested Pilot to make it. And they told me the reason why this was possible is because there were a lot of customers who came to Itoya and who asked the sales staff, they complained to the sales staff, they said, we want a demonstrator 823. And so they took this customer request and they took it to Pilot, and Pilot made the demonstrator Clear 823, which I think is a great story. So I told them, I said, oh, okay, if that's the case, tell them we want a purple one now. So yeah, if you want a purple 823, you gotta write into Itoya, guys.
Yeah, so I think what Custom Kai means is that retail store has like Pilot authorized, like Pilot trained sales staff, right?
It does not, because Shosaikan is part of Custom Kai, and they're not allowed to sell the Bamboo Forest. And they have like 3 or 4 staff. I know all of them. None of them belong to Pilot.
Not belong to Pilot, but authorized by Pilot. It's actually a bit confusing because Pilot seems to have these various spheres of like so for example, when they sold this Tokyo LE exclusive inks, those inks were sold at Itoya. They were not sold at Maruzen. I don't think they were sold at Shosaikan, but then there are some small retail stores, including one in Ueno that very few people have ever heard of, they get to sell these Tokyo LE inks. So there seems to be various, depending on the product, the certain stores get to sell them.
Specifically about the LE inks, I specifically asked them, I said, so what's the criteria? And they told me that the staff have to be seconded from Pilot. So the staff belong to Pilot. So even in this, small store up in Ueno, which I went to, the staff had Pilot badges. At Maruzen, I don't believe that they have staff seconded from Pilot.
But Maruzen, they get to sell Bamboo Forest, and they do get to sell the other, like Custom 74, the Custom Kai versions. Although they, for some reason, they seem to get fewer pens to sell than Itoya.
Yeah,
always.
But I also think that that's because Itoya is just generally a larger store for stationery.
Could be.
Yeah, I don't know, but yeah, I did think that was kind of a funny story for the 823.
Yeah.
And a few weeks ago, I think maybe last week, we met up before the situation of Omicron got super terrible here in Tokyo. But you had mentioned in the last episode that you thought PenBBS was the pen brand of the year for you.
Yeah.
Because they were very, very innovative in releasing the nibs. And, for the first time you had kind of naginata nibs that you could buy on steel nib pens with the appropriate amount of tipping.
Yeah.
That was readily available. Well, at first they were not readily available, but now you can buy them off their Etsy store. I brought 2 carved nibs. This is part of their hand-carved nibs to our meeting last week. And you had a chance to look at them and to check them out and to test them. What was your impression of these nibs?
We saw these photos by Bainey like many months ago now, and it looked like too good to be true. Like they can't possibly be this detailed, right? But when I saw the real thing, it's actually as good as it is what you were hoping it to be. It's really detailed carving. It looks beautiful, and it's got those naginata like nibs. So I'm very impressed with these nibs.
I do have to say that these nibs do not look hand carved. They are so detailed, so precise, and just extremely, it's like laser focused, very beautiful. When I saw the first ones, the cuts looked a little bit deeper, but on the ones that I received, they were still deep. They were still very, very beautiful. These could have been, if you told me that they were imprinted, I would have believed you. But that's also because the designs that I chose didn't have a lot of the carved out sections, right? If I'm looking at the ones we see from a few months back, particularly the ones with the cat, for example, right? The entire ear is carved out. If I had chosen something like that, I would probably see more like a hand carved. Maybe I would see like a little mistake here and there. But these ones that I received, they were, of an incredible quality.
But that to me makes it even more impressive, because that means you figured out a way to produce these in a consistent manner, and you can probably do it at the scale that would be impossible if they are hand carved, right?
So I'm hoping that that's the case. But I mean, these nibs, they were not cheap. They were not cheap. They were $300 a piece, which is what I might pay for a, Mont Blanc 149 nib. However, I would argue that the design and the just sheer amount of tipping that they have just makes it totally worth it.
Yeah, but there's not really anything that comes to mind, at least to me, that compares to this, right? To this kind of detailed carving on a nib.
I'll send you the link of the ones that I got. So I got both the fish one and the lotus one. But you can clearly see that these are less intricate. I mean, they're not less intricate. They're actually more intricate, but less carved in than some of the other ones that we saw.
Right, but to me that kind of suggests that they're still tweaking the process.
Interestingly, these only came with the number 4 grind, the calligraphy 4 grind.
Well, one thing Bainey told me before, and we covered this on the podcast, that these steel calligraphy nibs, they are doing like 20 or 30 different ones, right? And they are seeing which ones are popular. And we talked, when we compared them before, we said that the one that is most Naginata like is the number 4 and maybe number 5. So I don't think it's too surprising that they choose number 4. I suspect that number 4 would be the one most popular in for Chinese calligraphy, while number 2, the architect one, would probably be most popular in the West.
Although I did like the number 1 a lot as well.
Yeah, you don't get as fine lines. That's almost like a zoom nib, not quite, but more zoom like than number 4.
And if I'm looking at the comparison between these carved nibs and the regular nibs, I'm just sending you a photo right now. Is it just me, or does the carved nib almost seem like the tines are more kind of, I don't want to say long, but kind of, the curve inward the curve outwards is almost a bit more sharp.
Yes, I was going to say that from this photo that you sent me now, it looks more architect-like, right? It looks like a triangle at the top.
Yeah, these are incredible, and not to mention when they came out with the gold nibs, they actually had tested 2 different alloys, and I got the DE alloy on both the regular ones and these carved ones. What did you feel about the actual like writing experience of those nibs? I mean, I modified one of them already. I triple stacked one, but the other one came at a factory.
Yeah, I really liked it. I thought it was quite Naginata-like, for lack of a better word. There was definitely some bounce there, and you had enough feedback to produce like exact lines without it being scratchy. So I think they did a good job. Yeah,
because I was very surprised at the level of kind of bounciness. The nibs are really responsive, and I think this is why I think PenBBS is probably one of the most incredible Chinese brands out there, and really one of the most innovative brands out there, period. But I think this almost marks a turning point for Chinese pen making, because this is not the first time that Chinese brands have come out with gold nibs. In fact, Wing Sung is coming out with Naginata gold nibs as well.
Yeah,
they don't look that nice, but they're coming out with them. Junhao has gold nibs before. Lucky had gold nibs, and there were different types of gold nibs too. There were 12K gold nibs, 10K gold nibs, 14K gold nibs in the past. But the level of the amount of tipping that they have, the amount of different grinds that they have, it's really, for me, it's I mean, PenBBS already came out with like tens of different filling systems, right? But this is like, all right, we're going to be part of the big boys then.
Yeah, and not just being part of the big boys. To me,
you're leading them.
To me, this is PenBBS like leaving Jovo and Bock in the dust, right? Because they don't have anything like this factory made.
Yeah. I mean, I've had pen makers contact me saying, hey, how can I buy PenBBS nibs. I just want like can they produce my nibs for me? Which I think is incredible for the industry there, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
What do we want out of PenBBS? Like, what's our personal like wishes out of that?
So clearly they are trying to be a more high-end brand. It doesn't necessarily mean that they are giving up on the low end where they started, but that's clearly where they are expanding now. What I would like to see is not so much about product development, but I would like to go into Itoya and see a selection of PenBBS pens. Now, I don't think that's going to happen because I think Bainey has said in the past that they are not interested in that model at all. But maybe as they move more into high end, maybe they will rethink that. At least I'm hoping that they will rethink that, because right now, the fact that you can only buy these pens on Etsy or from various like resellers on Amazon and eBay, it cheapens the brand a bit. And I think that if you had a selection of PenBBS pens on Mother's End, I think a lot of people would choose a PenBBS 456 instead of a Twisby, instead of a Lamy, instead of a Kaweco, because they are that good. But people just need to realize it. Yeah.
And I think one of the things that, you know, PenBBS has always been great at turning out amazing pens. But I think sometimes their plastic can be, or their resin, I don't know what it is, can be a little bit brittle. I'm hoping that they upgrade the trims a bit, because they're focusing a lot of energy, rightfully so, on the writing end. And I think they've achieved that. Now I think it's time to upgrade the rest of the pen and really come out with, as you said, maybe a high-end model of a PenBBS. Right? Like, what would that look like? I don't know, because all of my PenBBS nibs are not in PenBBS pens.
Yeah.
They're like Leonardo's, they're whatever's.
But
so I'm very curious.
But they are learning from their mistakes. They are improving. And going back to what you said about, problems with the plastic, there was this model called 268. I might be getting the number wrong, but they had this the low end vac filler that was designed to be a low end vac filler. It had known problems with cracks, but that's probably the only model I know of that had that problem. I haven't heard anything about the recent models. And also in the past there were complaints about PenBBS feeds, that the fins were too fragile and could bend easily. And they have recently come up with a new feed design with thicker fins. So they are iterating, they are improving. One thing, more thing I would like them to do is to just streamline and simplify their lineup, because they are I think they are worse than like Sailor and Lamy right now. Like if you go to the Etsy store, I think I have the page up right now. They have like 13 different models, and I did a good job in the past, I think, of keeping track of the new PenBBS models.
Because you got all of them.
Yeah. But even I can't remember what's what anymore. I mean, it's 471. I can't remember what that is anymore. And there's so many of them. And they keep updating all of them, right? Which kind of... I wonder if they're spreading themselves thin doing that. Some of the models are not really that interesting, at least to me anymore. Like the 309 was their early piston filler, which had a known problem with the piston getting stuck. I'm not sure why they even produced that one anymore. In my view, their best models is 456, which is the not the cheap vacuum filler, but the nice vacuum filler. That is a very solid pen. I wish they would do something similar to what Narwhal is doing. They had this sort of base model, and then they do all kinds of interesting special editions based on that base model, the 456.
Yeah, for me it's the 355, but of course I've already talked about it. I want a better cap on it. But yeah, I think their only special editions have been the cat series, right? Like the Amber is a cat, Niangao is a cat. But those colors seem to show up much less now.
Yeah, and they do update the inventory on PenBBS, but what very often happens is that you do get some ambers a cat, but it's like some model that you don't want, right? And that goes back to this whole idea of, can't you just simplify the lineup and give us some more interesting 4, 5, 6 acrylics?
Yeah, but I think, I hope we both agree, like, really hats off to Bainey, to Long, and to the rest of the PenBBS team, because they've really achieved something incredible here. Yeah. All right, next topic, Kakimori metal nibs. Now, we kind of praised these nibs quite a lot last time.
Yeah.
We thought they were great. And some of these nibs have been making their way to the States, and I went and bought some of these nibs too. When I bought my nib, I kind of sent you a video. I was like, hey, is this nib supposed to write like this?
Right.
So what happened is that the nib wrote fine on the lower angles, so producing the fat lines, but really couldn't produce any kind of medium or fine line. Which is what most of the stores were advertising this, right?
I don't agree
okay.
with you on that, because I think if you look at Kakimori's like the photos, the videos, their ad copy, this is not at least this is definitely not a pen you would buy to draw like hairlines and technical drawings. This is clearly a nib that is meant that you buy to play with inks. You can go from like broad to pilot parallel type lines, but I don't think anyone would see that and say this is the perfect nib for very thin lines.
No, but if you look at the promotional materials from like Yoseika, from Muse, where there was a lot of discussion about how, hey, this can produce different types of lines. I don't necessarily think like, we have to go down to like needle points. I'm not expecting them to have needle points. But there was a lot that was being said about how, hey, this nib produces variable lines, and Muse kind of talked about them like they had like a bit of Naginata like flair to them, because you could write Chinese characters like that, right? And in almost all of the promotional photos that I saw had the kind of it's not a writing, but it's like a testing where they go from like the thinner lines to the thicker lines, right? So they have like maybe like a medium fine line, and then they lower the angle, and they go all the way to like like a 6B or something.
Yeah, for sure.
So I sent you a video of kind of trying to write with the pen. I wrote with it first, but didn't write. So I was like, hey, can you try this? Maybe it's me. And ink wouldn't come out at all. And then you sent me a video of you writing with your stainless Swan, with the exact same ink, and wrote fine.
Yeah.
So I sent Kakimori a message on Instagram. I was like, hey, and this is how you complain in Japan, right? You don't say, hey, I want a refund. You say, hey, I need your advice on what I'm doing wrong here. Nothing comes out of this nib, so please tell me what to do. And they came back to me with a statement which I shared with you. And you had commented that it kind of felt like a prepared corporate statement.
Yeah, you sent me a number of messages, and I was a little bit confused, because at first it sounded like they were acknowledging that there were some problematic batches, but then in the follow-up message it sounded like they changed that to say, like, we have figured out what is the optimal way to write with these nibs, and you should hold it at a 45-degree angle, and if you do that, then everything will be fine.
Yeah, so I'm going to read, or I'm going to translate this message. It says, I've seen the video. We're very sorry about the inconvenience that it caused. This time, due to a lack of inspection, a part of the brass metal nibs have been found to be inconsistent, and there's a chance that some of these were inconsistent, and we would like to exchange this product for another one, which we have tested in the shop and made sure that it works. He says, from here on out, we're going to redo the testing. We're going to reinspect all of them, and we're going to say that if you write at a 45-degree angle, then you will be able to write with all sides of this nib, and we're going to kind of reassess the standard of that, and then we're going to communicate with the factory and make sure that we kind of improve our design on this.
Right.
This tells me two things. This tells me that there's going to be more metal nibs if they're going to improve the design of it.
Yeah.
But it also tells me that I'm not the first one to send them a message.
Yeah, you're right, because you sent that on like a Saturday evening or something like that, right? And you got a relatively fast response.
I got one within 24 hours, so it took like 22 hours to respond. But it was, it's interesting, I think, because I wouldn't say nobody, but I'm not convinced that a large or even significant population writes at a 45-degree angle. I think that most people write somewhere between 60 to 70. And it's interesting because what they told me is that for the brass nib, I went to the store afterwards. They told me for the brass nib, you have to hold it at around 40 degrees. For the stainless nib, you can hold it around 60 degrees, which is still kind of low for me. I think for most Asian writing, we hold it like a bit higher. And I don't know if your son goes to like these shoto classes, but in like, brush calligraphy, you actually hold it at 90 degrees.
Yeah, the way you hold a brush is definitely different from the way you hold the normal pen.
Yeah. So it's a very specific way of holding it, and this is not written on their website nor promotional video, nor their promotional materials until 2 days ago.
Right, so they put up a statement or a blog post where they said, here's how we recommend that you use these pens. So hold them at 45 degrees, and when you remove the nibs, you rotate them to remove. If you want to know what the difference is between the brass one and the steel one, then you can hold it at a slightly higher angle, I think they say, with the steel one, while the brass one gives you more line variation. That's sort of what I got out of it, so that confused me a little bit. But yeah, it was sort of an explainer, and then at the end of that post was one sentence saying that if you have problems with your nibs, they contact us, we'll work something out.
Which is so interesting because I don't understand why the stainless steel nib would write finer lines, which is what they're claiming on the website, that would write finer lines. As far as I can see, the design looks exactly the same.
Yeah, this is not something I know much about, but isn't brass a softer material? And if brass is a softer material, does that make it harder to create these like very fine grooves at the top?
I'm not sure. But I actually went and modified my brass nib afterwards, and was able to make it write a little bit finer. So now it works a little bit better than what I expected. But yeah, I would say that these nibs are still prototype, but I'm still okay with it because they're like $30. Right? They're not $200 like what Drilog is asking for. And we know those don't work out. I mean, they work, but they don't work as well as, we would hope them to either, right? Yeah,
but also, again, I think most people who buy these Kakimori inks, they don't buy them to write in their journal. They buy them to play with inks, and they're more interested in the broad strokes than in the fine strokes.
which leads me to the next topic on this, is that we know that basically these nibs are sold out everywhere you can look online, right?
Yes.
So in the US, Yoseka's totally sold out of them. They're like, oh, we might get more in the spring. Even here on the Kakimori website, they're like all sold out. I went to the shop. They had plenty of them. They had at least, 10 to 20 of each of the metal nibs, which I was pretty surprised at. And interestingly, they sold out of all the glass nibs. So there were no glass nibs at the shop. And it was funny because they had 3 little sections, and the glass nib part was just completely empty, and then they had boxes of the metal nibs. Let's start with the stock and inventory situation, because we had a discussion off the podcast about this, but you were talking about how it seems strange, maybe they're trying to do something with having people actually come to the store versus buying online.
Well, we know that at least, this might be common in general, but we know at least as far as Japanese stationery stores, this is common, right? We talked about Usagia. They sometimes sell a small number of pens online. The rest are in the brick and mortar stores. Same with Hachimonja, same with Pentanote, I believe, same with Kobayashi. So it's definitely not uncommon here, but the difference here would be that Kakimori seems to have more global ambitions, and they have these retailer agreements, and I'm sure both Yoseka and Muse Pens and all the others are kindly asking for more deliveries, right?
Yeah, I think there's definitely something to be said there about what is their retail strategy. They obviously want to have very broad appeal. They sell all sorts of pens there, and they clearly are interested in the international audience, much more so than a lot of these other retailers. And it's interesting because they're not acting just as a retailer, they're also acting kind of as a manufacturer or a distributor.
Yeah.
We know they don't actually manufacture these nibs by themselves, but you can only get the nibs through Kakimori. They're all Kakimori branded.
Right.
So, when I was working at in this kind of a retail space before, it wasn't uncommon for the e-commerce shop to have a totally separate inventory from the retail shop. I think what's curious here is that on the online shops, they've been sold out for so long.
Well, they have this brief stock drops, right? So every once in a while they have it, and then they sell out in 1 or 2 days, and it's gone for a few weeks.
Yeah, but they haven't really done a larger scale reorientation of how they allocate their merchandise, which to me is kind of interesting, because it kind of shows what philosophy they have towards that shop. Because if you're trying to maximize sales, right, you definitely put more on the e-commerce shop because you know that the demand is there. And if you are a consumer and you want to buy these metal nibs, before you head out on a trek to Kakimori, you're probably going to see if they have any online. And if it says sold out online, there's no way of you knowing, based on the way that the copy is written, there's no way of for you to know that they have inventory in the retail shop.
Right. So unless you know that they generally have a separate inventory for retail, and you would assume based on
Exactly.
your history going there. Yeah.
Exactly. But even so, all the glass nibs are sold out, right? So if you are looking for the glass nib, you go all the way to Kakimori. There are no glass nibs. That's like, you kind of just wasted your day. But I guess they want to cross sell and sell different items along with the nibs there. So maybe that's why.
Yeah, which they still can do online though. Although maybe it's even easier when you are in a brick and mortar store and you have beautiful shelves full of notebooks and other things.
Yeah.
But I also think they are still themselves trying to figure this out. I think the deal with like Muse pens, for example, is fairly recent, so they're still probably working on this.
Yeah. And I think that they're they as a store are very focused on like the experience, right? Like they're really focused on, they've cut up a bunch of paper so that people can test every single kind of paper they have there. That's not something that, different shops have. Like at Itoya, there are a bunch of different papers, but you can't just, pull out the Graphilo paper and start writing on it, right?
Right.
So the whole experience part, I think, is quite a big deal for Kakimori. And so without going to the shop, do you actually get that full experience? That's another question that maybe they're asking themselves.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, we talked about Kakimori before, how this is probably one of the most beautiful stationery stores in Tokyo. It's an experience, as you say, to go there. It's so tasteful, and it's so fun to try all the papers, and you can try all kinds of fountain pens as well without having to ask them to, the staff to prepare something. It's all there for you to try. It's a beautiful store.
Lastly about this, I said already the glass nibs are all sold out. It's interesting that still glass nibs are outperforming the metal nibs. I think once we iterate on these metal nibs, once we get them to like parity to glass nibs, do you think that will shift?
Well, I don't agree with the premise that they are outperforming. I think a glass nib is better if your intention is to write. I think the metal nib is better if you want to play with ink. So they have different purposes. But I do suspect that it would be easier to scale up production of the metal nibs than the glass nibs.
So do you think that we'll see more iteration of the metal nibs?
Yeah, for sure.
All right, we're looking forward to that.
And I also think, and this goes back to our previous podcast discussion, I wouldn't be surprised if they get some competition either in Japan or elsewhere.
All right, let's move on to some of our more mainstream manufacturers then. I saw this yesterday on Instagram, on friend of the podcast Andy's Instagram. Platinum Hearts.
I didn't see much information about it. I saw there was some European retailer listed. Is this like an EU exclusive?
I'm not sure at all where this is going to come. It would be weird if it is an EU exclusive, but I'm not quite certain about where this is going to be. I would be surprised if they didn't at least try the formula first in Japan, because this is a very different type of Platinum's 3776 Century.
Why is it very different? I saw that the finial, there's something going on there. Other than that, it looks like a matte black with rose gold, or did I miss something?
Yeah, no, the finial is the main thing, and we always knew that Platinum had kind of I don't know, like maybe a strange finial, like you can't remove it unless you break it,
right,
kind of deal. And they've done like Mount Fuji nuts, right? They've done Mount Fuji screws.
Yeah.
This looks like there's a bunch of kind of might be glass, might be some kind of a gemstone. I doubt it. I think it's glass. In a bunch of different heart shapes that's surrounding the nut of the finial. And the reason why I say this is quite different is because you don't really see manufacturers kind of add on top of the nut and then placing a transparent dome over it. So while we had the Mount Fuji screw, that was still a metal screw, right? That was just shaped in Mount Fuji. Whereas this doesn't even look like this kind of material can be made into a screw.
Ah, interesting.
So it almost looks like they've added something on, or they've stuck something onto it to make it look like that. It's like a keycap. It's like a custom keycap.
Yeah. But it's still, I assume, like the whole slip and seal thing, right?
Yeah, the rest of the pen is honestly not super remarkable. I mean, it's rose gold trims. But we were just talking about Platinum not doing a lot of stuff, and of course we were reminded that they actually had a collaboration with the manga artists group Clamp. Yes. They came out with 3 special editions, which I bought, so I should have known that. But yeah, it's cool to see that they are coming out with something that honestly looks very strange to me. Like, it looks very strange. Other companies would have just made the entire finial color, sparkly, right? They actually made it demonstrator and have something inside.
Yeah, it looked like some confetti in a finial.
Yeah, which, I mean, it's still the tried and true 3776 century shape. It's definitely a century pen, but this finial this isn't for me. It reminds me, however, of a pen that I do own, which is the Mont Blanc Diamond.
I was just going to say that, exactly.
Yeah, where they have it suspended in diamond. But this is, I think, less. It looks less well executed, but following that same vein, which I do find interesting.
Yeah, and it's possible that there is some subtle glitter on the barrel that we can't tell from the photo, so we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, I personally like rose gold, so the fact that this pen has rose gold trim makes it more interesting to me.
But you were kind of I don't know if complaining is the right word, but complaining about how Platinum didn't do a lot of stuff last year.
Right.
Is this the right direction that you want to see for Platinum?
Yeah, I just wish they would communicate it better. I mean, why is this not on Platinum's own Instagram feed?
They're too busy cutting costs.
Maybe. Yeah, but they have always been terrible at communication and social media. We covered that before, so we don't need to repeat that. But the pen looks nice to me, and I'm sure it will be popular.
Yeah, and I'm actually seeing a product page for this on Novelli. So I'm going to read it out loud. The model will be available in 2,000 pieces. Peculiarity of this fountain pen are 2 small heart-shaped elements created by the vent hole of the nib and inserted into the dome, the upper part, together with microcrystals. Usually the pieces, and in this case the shape of a heart, are melted and reused as a new material, while in the shape of a heart model, it was decided to incorporate them into the design of the fountain pen itself. Okay, so the heart is the one that they stamp out of the breather hole.
Ah, that's kind of neat. I like that.
The pair of hearts enclosed in the dome conveys a sense of deep connection with the partner, making the pen an ideal gift for somebody who's precious and important to us.
But then, okay. Well, I think we covered this before, but in Japan, it's not uncommon as a wedding gift, it's like Myoto set with like 2 bowls or 2 something where one is slightly bigger than the other, right?
The model features 2 pieces of gold in the shape of a heart, black body applied with a nib clip and trims in rose gold in a unique design for this limited edition. To finish the crystals enclosed in the dome, the top of the pen, which adds a special taste to the pen. And it's not that expensive. It's less expensive, I believe, than the Shion and the Kinshu. It's 287 euros. It's about 30,000, 35,000 yen.
But is this a EU exclusive, or would it be...
It doesn't say.
Platinum's communication. Yeah, oh, well, it is what it is. Yeah, but it looks nice.
It's that's kind of cool. That I didn't realize that heart thing was in fact from the pen, like from the breather hole. That did get me a little bit more excited about this pen. All right, next release, which we know is not going to come to Japan, but Sailor has decided to come out with a series, Sailor Cocktail, new cocktail series. I thought we were done with the cocktail series.
Yeah, I mean, we discussed that when we talked about the Kure Azure, right? That your prediction was the last one. Yeah, I saw this just this morning. I don't know too much about it. We talked recently about this Sailor Bespoke pens and how you can make whichever pen you want from more or less by choosing like finial and section and whatever. And I said that this kind of has to raise the bar for other special editions, right? Because if you don't get a custom finial, you don't get a custom nib stamp, you don't get a custom cap band, you don't get, glitter on the barrel or in a motif or acrylic, then, and if the price is not significantly lower, well, why wouldn't you just go make your own bespoke pen? And this, to me, is not raising the bar, because you don't have, as far as I can tell, custom nib stamp, you don't have a custom band, you don't have a custom finial, you only have this like plain color like pouch bin, and based on what I could tell from like one of those websites, it's quite expensive. So I'm sure I'm sound very grumpy now, but this doesn't do anything for me.
Yeah, I think the colors are pretty. I think the gin martini is cool, but then it looks like you have to buy them in a set unless the retailer is willing to break them up. I don't know, they're not that cool. Like, I guess we are spoilt for choice here in Japan, but these don't look that much cooler to me. They do look like they're matte though. They look like they're a matte finish.
Yeah, that's nice, I guess. But, going back to our discussion in the previous podcast about, we like now brands like Leonardo because they have this beautiful like acrylic colorways and so on. Here we have a pretty expensive Sailor edition, and it's just too plain.
Yeah.
Too plain.
And that same thing goes to their new Sailor King of Pen color Urushi Ebonite pens, right? I just sent you a link on online, but it looks like they're taking their black Urushi model, black Ebonite model, and they are doing a series of 12 color Urushi.
Why does this Instagram post say bespoke MSRP?
They probably just found some fancy word and like, we'll do bespoke, but it probably just means that they're handmade. This is $1,500.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like the deja vu for me. Haven't we seen something like this recently?
Yeah, we've definitely seen these before. They're talking about like a reintroduction. Yeah, so we've definitely seen this before, but these were like $900 last, like I say last time, but it was like less than 6 months ago, and they've raised the price to $1,500 now. Well, $1,450.
Sorry, the one I thought about was they had this Ishime ones in a few colors released.
They had the glossy ones too.
Okay, but what I thought about were the Ishime ones were fairly recently released, and the price was not that crazy for a Urushi King of Pen. Compared to the Ishime one, this one looks, at least to me, a bit boring. But I'm sure there were people. I sound so grumpy. Sorry. I'm sure there were people who love these pens.
Yeah, it's just it's $1,500. That's I do think it's.
Yeah, I think something like a Taminuri or just any kind of like Kawari Nuri type design would elevate this. I'm sure that people who prefer just plain colors like this, but I don't know. It looks. I wish it would be a little bit more exciting.
Yeah, I saw that they came out with a takamaki called Shika and Gekko. So the deer and the moonlight. That one looked pretty cool.
Yes, that one was nice.
But that's like $5,000. Yeah, that was pretty cool. All right. Yeah, I guess that's most of what we wanted to talk about. We wanted to talk a little bit about inks, but I think we can save that for next time. Actually,
yeah, let's do that. Let's do that.
Yeah. All right. So we can't use the title that I really like, which is just several lines down. But we'll save that for next time.
Sure.
All right. That's been the episode, guys. Again, a little bit light on the news this time, but I hope there was still an enjoyable conversation for you all. And if there's nothing left to add, we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Yeah, and hopefully we have some more news then.
Yeah. With that, my name is CY. You can find me on my website at tokyostationpens.com, on Instagram and TikTok at tokyostationpens, and on Twitter at tokyostationmnh.
And my name is Jacob, and I am Fudefan on Instagram and on Twitter, and have a blog at fudefan.com.
Bye-bye.
Bye.